Hey everybody, Pastor Tom here. Thank you for joining me tonight. And just let me know if you can that you're hearing me and seeing me okay. For those of you that are actually signed in and joining me here, I have a question for you as we begin. And the question is, what if we really believed? Well, what do I mean by that? What if we really believed? I mean, really 100% believed at this moment that God was in absolute control of everything involving our lives. What if we believed He was totally in control? What if we believed that God never makes a mistake? That God always does the right thing with everything that's on your mind, everything that you're worried about? Let me ask you again, what if you really believed? I mean, I'm not just talking about because you're supposed to believe and you say you believe. I mean, what if you really believed that everything in your life right now that God was in control of? That God never makes a mistake, that God always does what is best for us, and that God always brings good out of bad. You say, well, there's things that I want God to control, and I probably will possibly mess it up. Or I'm not talking about your perfection. I'm talking about God's perfection, that even if you do kind of mess things up or make the wrong decisions, that still God ultimately is in control and you are in His hands. I mean, what if you really honestly believe that? Would your worry level go down? One time, the apostles of Jesus, we call them disciples, the 12 disciples. One time, they make what seems to be a rather demanding statement to Jesus. It has an exclamation point behind it, at least, and I'm not always sure exactly how it came off in real life. Maybe it was just because they were really excited and not demanding so much. But anyway, it does have an exclamation point, which at the very least just says that this is something that was important to them. And so the disciples one day said to Jesus, "Increase our faith." Because in their mind, they believed evidently that greater things could get done in their life and the things that they wanted to see accomplished. Greater things could get done if they had more faith. So in their mind, it was small faith, you don't get much done. Big faith, you get big things done. But Jesus, according to his reply here, disagrees with that idea of big faith means big things, and small faith means you can't hardly do anything. Because look at his reply. He says, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed. And by the way, since I am not a farmer and I know nothing about these things, for me to really understand what a mustard seed is, I had to order some on Amazon. So I ordered a whole container full of yellow mustard seeds from Amazon. I figure someday I'll use them, other than now. I mean, that is a lot. How big is a mustard seed? Well, you can see I'm struggling here to get a hold of one. I got one. You see? Can you see how small? There it is. A mustard seed is. And you can see it maybe by the picture compared to a dime. Tiny, tiny. All right, so their question is, how do I get bigger faith? Because their thought was, if I could only have faith like so-and-so does, I'd be able to see so much greater things done. Now, Jesus comes back with a reply that is an exaggeration. Rabbis often, as Jesus was a rabbi, rabbis would often use different techniques to teach people. And one of the techniques was teaching by exaggeration. In other words, they would make a statement. By the way, hi, Kevin and Lori, Dee and Lauren. I assume you guys can all see me and hear me okay. But Jesus would make statements that are obviously exaggerated to make a point, to make people smile, or just to help people kind of be shocked into getting the point. So Jesus says, by the way, Lauren and Dee, if you didn't see my mustard seed, I ordered a whole container full of them. And my mustard seed is so small that I can't even get a hold of it right now. There. And there it is. So Jesus says, in response to give me big faith, Jesus says, if your faith was just this big, you could say to this mulberry tree. And so evidently he's standing right by a mulberry tree as they're talking. So you could say, with this amount of faith, you could say to that tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it'll happen. Now, don't misunderstand here. I mean, Jesus here is teaching them within the context of lots of other things that he's taught them about answers to prayer and how to pray and so forth. So the understanding here, combined with all the other teaching that Jesus has given them, the understanding is, you can't just ask for a building to be destroyed just to show off your faith. And you can't ask for something that, that's not in God's will. I mean, that's all understood. because you take the whole body of Jesus' teaching that he's giving the disciples, and they're weighing all that in there. That they know that. So, but he's just talking about the pure power of small faith is such that a small amount of faith could uproot a mulberry tree. So what's a mulberry tree look like? Well, again, it's a small picture, but it's underneath the picture of the dime there. And if you could see that picture bigger, that picture, that mulberry tree is actually, it looks like it's at least a couple stories high. So with itsy bitsy faith, amount of faith, Jesus says something that big could happen. Every now and then I've tried to uproot things that are growing in the ground, like I don't know, ugly bushes that my wife doesn't like, and you know how hard that is, right? Sometimes when just a little bush, the roots are growing, I don't know, just several feet into the ground. You know how hard that can be to get that out. And imagine a tree the size of a mulberry tree to be able to uproot that thing. And then Jesus, just to make it sillier or more shock value or exaggerated, Jesus says, so suppose, I mean, if you have just a itsy bitsy little faith, you could uproot that tree, and then it like goes up in the air, and then it goes right into the sea, and it gets replanted in the sea, and it grows. Now that's a powerful effect, Jesus is saying, from an itsy bitsy amount of faith. Okay, so here's the deal. The disciples here are asking Jesus for bigger faith, but Jesus says, in essence, that's not the right question. The right question shouldn't be about the size of your faith. The question should be more, first, do you have any amount of honest to goodness faith? And by the way, you wouldn't be watching this tonight if you didn't have any amount of faith, I'm sure. Do you have any amount, any mustard seed amount of itsy bitsy faith, honest to goodness faith? It doesn't have to be the faith of, name some spiritual giant, whatever. It doesn't have to be that, just itsy bitsy. If you just have that much, if you use it and apply it, then amazing things, so much bigger things can happen than just the amount of your faith if you apply it. Okay, so that's the thing here that we're talking about. Jesus is saying, you're asking the wrong question. You shouldn't be asking me to increase your faith, because I already know you have faith. In fact, you say you have faith in the sentence, increase my faith. I have faith. And that's not the right question. The right question really should be, are you going to do anything with it? So increase our faith. And he says it doesn't take much, but you need to say something, or you need to do something. You need to apply the little honest to goodness faith you have, because you can have faith the size of a skyscraper, but if you don't apply it, it doesn't do anything. Or you could have the faith of a mustard seed, but if you won't do anything with it, that's the same deal. It's not going to do anything. So the lesson of the mustard seed isn't about really the size of a person's faith. It's about whether or not they apply that faith. Let's go on. Most of us already have enough faith to do what we need to do to accomplish mulberry tree uprooting, thrown into the sea and it grows events. See, for the disciples, it wasn't because they had a lack of faith. I mean, it wasn't because their faith was so small. Jesus says, no, you just got to do something with it. Most of us already have enough faith. We just don't use it. Just notice my computer is running on faith here. And I've got it's saying low, it has low faith or low battery, so I just had to plug it in. All right, you getting where I'm coming from? It's all right, here's what it is. You say, probably, like I have, you can't do anything for God. You can't do anything big for God. Oh, if I just had enough faith, then I could do what God wants me to do, but I just can't do it because I'm just not that kind of person. Jesus says it doesn't take much faith. It takes action. What does the Bible say? Faith without works is dead. Remember this story? Okay, this is Jesus and I like how the scripture says it. We don't have time to get into this right now, but it says he makes his disciples get into the boat and he doesn't go with them. He makes them get into the boat because he knows an experience is going to happen that they need to grow from. I'm just curious. Do you think there's anything that God's making you do right now that, maybe just like a light comes on right now? Oh, it's because he's making me do that because he wants to teach me something from it. Anyway, so Jesus makes them get in the boat and they're rowing across this lake and they were already a considerable distance. In other words, too far to look back at Jesus and say, hey, Jesus, we're in trouble. Could you swim out here? No, too far. Buffeted, which, by the way, buffeted means violent winds. Okay. Buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. So I guess buffeted here is talking about the violent waves because the wind is against it. Sounds just like something Jesus would do, by the way. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. And when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. Listen, look at the terminology, cried. These are fishermen that are experienced fishermen. They've seen everything pretty much, and they're so scared because the storm is so bad. Their problem isn't so much that they need bigger faith. Their problem is that they need to apply their faith. So Jesus immediately says to them, take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. I want to ask you those questions again that I asked at the beginning, and I'll come back to them again. But here's the questions again. What if you really believed, honest to goodness, 100% 100% believed that God was in control? I mean, you had no doubt that God was in control of everything that you're worried about, everything you're upset about, everything you don't think is fair. What if you, honest to goodness, believed that God has it all under control and that God never makes a mistake? So, in other words, whatever it is that you're worried about, that God, that's happening, that God is going to do the right thing, and you 100% believe that. What if you believe that everything that you're worried about right now, and you're concerned about, and you're upset about, that God always does, that Romans 8:28 really is true, that He always does work the good out of the bad? And that He always does what's best. Everything you're upset about, you're worried about, what if you honestly believed that somehow, even though I don't understand it, God, it's the best thing? What if you believe that? So we go back to this. Jesus says, take courage. Let's understand this, that you can't go to a seminar and get more faith. You can't hear a message and all of a sudden your faith level or your courage level is going to be increased. That's not something that you can increase on your own, like by lifting courage weights or faith weights. Can't do that. You get faith from God. So Jesus says here, I'm courage, take some of it. And how do you take that? What do we have to do in order to really fully believe God and be able to deal with life well? Well, it really isn't. If you're at 5% faith right now, it really isn't by getting to 80% faith. No. It's by putting it into action. So Jesus says, look, it's me. Look at me. I am God. Just look at me. Stop looking at the things that are out of control in your mind. Stop looking at the things that you're upset at. Stop looking at the things that you think are going wrong and you think are unfair. And you're saying, well, what if, and how come? And stop looking at all that and look at me. I created this whole deal. He's walking on the water. I created the water. I created these winds. I created you. I made the trees that your boat's made from. I was around before there was even something to make a problem in your life. Look at me. And then you don't have to be afraid. If you see how big I am, what happens is when we worry, when we get upset, if we let that get away from us, we reduce the size of Jesus, and the mountain of whatever we're worried about gets bigger. Unfortunately, it's not true, but that's not in reality, but that's the way it is. So we reduce Jesus, we reduce God, and all we can see now is this and that's wrong, this and that's not going right, and so unfair, and what if, and how come, and if I just had 80% faith, I could deal with this. No. If you could just see Jesus, and honestly believe that He is in control, that He never makes a mistake, that He always does what is best for you, and that He always does make good out of bad, then you could relax. Faith is satisfied with "it is I." Jesus says, I know you want to look at the water. I know you want to look at the waves. I know you want to see that water's in the boat. I know you want answers. I know you want at least some clue of what's going on. I know you want to know what I'm thinking. All you need to know is I'm here. I'm Jesus. It is I. What does he say in the Old Testament? The name of God is I am that I am. I am. I'm big enough, strong enough. I am that I am. And that's all you need to know. God is that he is. And so Jesus just says, look, you want courage? Take some. How do you take it? Just by realizing I am here. I am enough. Take courage. So faith is satisfied with not having to know everything. Faith is satisfied by not having to have everything figured out and God having to sit you down and explain everything and give you all kinds of hints and clues. No, faith is satisfied just that God says, I'm here. Boom. That's faith. And faith, by the way, doesn't include but at the end of the statement. I believe God is in control. I believe God is in control. I believe God's in control, but I'm so stressed out about the surgery I'm having next month. See, the but just ruins the whole thing. Did you worry when you were a child and assuming you had good parents, loving parents, did you worry about your next meal? And maybe you didn't have good parents, and so this whole illustration's kind of warped for you. But if you had good parents, did you worry about having shelter? No. Because you believed somehow mom and dad are always big enough, strong enough. And somehow, even if they didn't have enough, they'd make sure you did. Anything that you have to put the word but behind it, it shows that you have an issue with believing that God is in control, or God never makes a mistake, or God always does what's best for you, or God always makes good out of bad. Anything you have to add but to, like, I believe God's in control, but I just don't know if I'm going to make it financially this month. Whatever it is we put but to shows that we have faith. I mean, we really have faith issues. As you know, the Lord's Prayer's big to me. I go through the process of it every day, the steps of it every day. And the very start of it is Our Father, which says to me, I am praying to it is I. I am praying to I am that I am. I am praying to the God who's big enough to work out anything that doesn't seem right to me or seems scary to me, or I'm not going to have enough or whatever. And so I don't even go any further in that prayer until I can settle the fact that I'm talking to my Heavenly Father who loves me and who is fully capable, and He's on my side just like any good father would be. He wants to do what is best for me. And sometimes I literally cannot go through the rest of that prayer until I can settle that. And so I'll have to pause for a while because my worries have got out of control. And I have to get back and just say, my Father, I am the great I am. My Father, it is I, my Father. Because you're my Father, because you're great enough, because you love me enough, you're always in control. You never make a mistake. You always do what's best for me. You always bring good out of the bad. Until I can resolve that, I don't go on in the prayer. So as we wind this talk up, here's something to do right now. If you're worried about something, write it down on paper. I'll just call it a worry list. And then beside the things that you write down, that, by the way, you're going to give to God tonight and tomorrow, keep these things with you. Keep this list with you. Keep these statements with you. Every time the worry starts to creep up in your mind and your heart, get these statements out and rethink of the fact of Jesus walking out on the water, just saying, all you have to do to get courage is take it from me. And you take it from me by believing I'm enough. I'm always in control. I never make a mistake. I always do what's best. I always bring good out of the bad. So make your worry list and write beside it these statements in big letters. God is in control. God never makes mistake. God always does what is best. God always brings good out of the bad. And then choose one step of faith, one tangible step. For some of you listening to this tonight, you know exactly what that is. You know what, and it doesn't have to be big, just something positive that moves you in that right direction. And it might be the very thing that you've been afraid to do because you've relied on this thought. You've hid behind this thought that you're not a big faith person and you can't do big things because you just don't have big enough faith. That's nonsense according to Jesus, because it doesn't take much faith. What it takes is you deciding you're going to trust that God's in control. He doesn't make mistakes. He does what is best, and He makes good out of bad. And you just take a step and trust Him and do something about it. And then for some of you, it may be just these random things that threaten you and plague you every day. And there may not be some literal step of tangible faith, but your step is, as you start your day or as you feel that fear, your step is imagining yourself on that boat and you see Jesus walking. And He says, I'm enough. Relax, rest in me. See how good I am. See how powerful I am. See how much I love you. Breathe deeply and give it to me. And know I've got it. It's going to be okay. Let go of it. And that's your step of faith, perhaps. Do that tonight. Do it tomorrow. I mean, what if we, honestly, what would our worry list look like if we really believed God was in control? God doesn't make mistakes. He always does best. And whatever bad thing's going on, he's going to make good out of it. What if we just really believe that? How much better life would be. Thank you all for joining in. And if you're around on Sunday morning, we have, among other things, baptism going on in the service. It's going to be a great day. I hope that you'll be able to be there at Ithaca Church of God at 10:30. And if you can't be, look for me online on 24today.org or on Facebook on our church page, because I update those pages pretty frequently, especially the church page. And I've been putting my sermon series on there, redoing them and just kind of speaking them out again. So if you want to catch up on the series called Jesus in Genesis, it's there. Hey, thanks again, and we'll see you next week.